Hello, welcome to the Cure Chronicles. I'm Jeff Galvin, your host, and today I'm excited to be joined by Raif Derrazi, an HIV/AIDS advocate, vlogger, fitness model, and natural physique bodybuilder. In 2012, on his birthday, Raif was diagnosed with HIV. Following his diagnosis, Raif refused to let the virus control his life. He built his strength and physical fitness through bodybuilding, and he started sharing his experiences online in the hopes of inspiring others to become their best selves, no matter the circumstances. Today, Raif is host on Plus Life Media, a multi-platform brand dedicated to bringing conversations about HIV back into the mainstream and ending HIV stigma. He has partnered with organizations like AIDS Healthcare Foundation and NMAC in an effort to change how people view living with HIV, and is set to be an ambassador representing the US at the Gay Games in Hong Kong next year. Raif, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I got to say right off the bat, the thing that just struck me about your story arc that I thought was amazing is you get this diagnosis of HIV on your birthday in 2012. I mean, that just to me is like ironic in a way. But then, you decide to use that as a launching pad to become healthier than everybody else. I mean, what you've done since then is just amazing, right? You're a model and a bodybuilder, and just really you've gone the exact opposite direction of the way that people expect. When folks get sick, right? Which I just think is amazing. Like what drove you? What inspired you? What was the, give us some of the details about how you made that transition.
Yeah, so to be technically accurate, I was diagnosed with HIV the week before my birthday. And then on my birthday, I was diagnosed with AIDS. So that was like, holy,
Oh my gosh.
So at that point, I really had to take some time to myself to, first of all, get my body back to normal, take my medication. It was like the immediate, like, emergency steps, which I did, and my body recovered rather quickly. In like 6 to 9 months, I was, I think, undetectable, and my immune system was recovering.
Wow.
And in that first year, I ended up breaking my ankle, and so I was bedridden for 5.5, 6 months, and I had a lot of time to do a lot of introspection. I did a lot of dream journaling and gratitude journaling and reading self-help books and all this stuff. And I came to the conclusion that I had been living the majority of my life with a victim mentality, because I was legitimately a victim as a kid. I went through a lot of trauma, and I learned that behavior, I could use that to my advantage growing up into adolescence and into my teenage years. That I was using being a victim to get what I needed or what I wanted or sympathy or what have you. And it ended up becoming a crutch into adulthood, so that I literally became a physical manifestation of a victim with my AIDS diagnosis. And so I knew at that point, if anything was going to change, I had to change my mindset from being a victim to being the leader of my life, to being the ultimate responsible person for my experience of life.
Yeah.
And so that meant a lot of changes mentally, emotionally, and then part of that equation was my body, my physical health. And so that's when I just dove into going to the gym. I had no idea what I was doing. I would jump from machine to machine and just kind of like go through the motions. And eventually I happened upon a personal trainer who ended up training me, and they encouraged me to compete as well. And then it just went from there.
Amazing, because what you're telling me is like, oh, you only saw half the story. Well, actually, a quarter of the story. First of all, it wasn't just HIV, which is bad enough to get that diagnosis, but you already had the clinical symptoms of AIDS. I mean, you were in a potentially vulnerable state at that point. And so you were coming back from real depths. This wasn't like a lot of people. Like, it's just absolutely shocking, I would imagine, to get an HIV diagnosis, and a lot of people get it from a blood test for something else, right? But they usually find out before, and maybe this isn't a good thing, they usually find out before it becomes a serious health problem for them, that they've got the HIV virus inside of them. And I do find that a lot of people seem to bury their head in the sand a little bit, but you didn't have that choice. Okay, so that's like, there's one half right there. Okay, now let's take that to the second power. You didn't just go to heal your body, you healed your mind. I mean, you took a journey that, man, all of us need that journey. All of us need to examine our lives and figure out how we can, essentially get control of our lives and build the future that we want, take responsibility for it, and just become the masters of our own future, right? Whatever that future is, right? And there's so many ways, and there's so many futures that are fantastic. And you didn't let that devastating, week around that birthday in 2012 knock you off course. As a matter of fact, just the opposite. You use that time to just completely redesign your future. I mean, you're super young right now. At least, I don't know how old you are, but how old were you when you got the diagnosis?
I was 27. I'll be 37 on May 8th.
Holy cow. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, you can pass for a college kid, but, and I got my beauty filter turned way up, but, so, I don't look as old as I really am, but, 37 to me is pretty young anyway, but
yeah,
you look fantastic. That's great. That's just one aspect of it. But I love that story about, thinking about your childhood and the, sort of the habits you had brought into your life that maybe weren't going to lead to a happy life, even if you hadn't gotten HIV or AIDS.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that? Yeah.
I firmly believe that life gives us ample opportunity to, as you said, take a chance to reevaluate who we are, our strengths, our weaknesses, and improve upon things and fix things in ourselves. We get ample chances from life in the form of little whispers and little nudges. And as time goes on, if we don't address the issues in ourselves, then those nudges get turned into a shove and a push and a kick until you get beaten down with a situation like this, where it's like, okay, well, you either fix this or you're done, you're toast. And I unfortunately had to get to that point before I could really reevaluate and change things.
Yeah, they say sometimes people don't change until they hit sort of a real low in their life like that. Like you find out that people finally stop drinking when they wake up in jail, finding out that they injured somebody or even killed somebody.
Yeah.
And that changes their life. But fortunately, your thing was entirely internal, right? That you didn't have to worry about the impact necessarily that you'd had on others around you from your bad habits, or that some you might consider bad habits. I don't know that that's and by bad habits, I mean your victim mentality. That's the thing, is that, you just looked at yourself and you said, okay, here I am at this point, here's where I want to be. And you plotted a course there. I do
want to clarify too, not to give the impression that like I did something to deserve getting AIDS or something like that, or that like because I had a victim mindset, I got AIDS. It was more about my decision making along the way, and like not standing up for my physical health, my emotional health, and like making decisions that weren't good for me, like staying in a relationship, for example, that I knew was unhealthy, and I knew that there was trust issues there, and not listening to those red flags. And then after my AIDS diagnosis, finding out, okay, this person had been cheating. Had I had the self-worth to remove myself from that situation, then maybe that wouldn't have happened to begin with.
So glad you clarified that, because I didn't even realize I was giving that impression that, it's there is so much stigma around HIV that people always ask that question. And sometimes I forget that might be the first thing on people's minds, is like, well, how did you get it?
Totally,
right.
Totally.
And there are straight guys with it. And that's, they have this fear that, people are going to assume that I'm gay. Not that would make, what's the big deal, but at the same time, like, they have a stigma about being associated. And this is something that's so critical to break. And I noticed that that's a whole nother part of the life that you've built, is in advocating within this community and working to break the stigma. So I think it was really important that you made that, crystal clear, because I think I was being a little bit fuzzy in my questioning, but I didn't mean to go that direction with it. I think of it more as I see so many similarities in your arc with just every other person on earth. That's what I mean to say, is that, you had some habits that weren't leading to a full, fulfilling life of your own design. And everybody has that, right? Oh, and your boyfriend was cheating on you? I mean, come on, if every woman that's listening to this doesn't go like, yo, I know what that's like, right? I'd be really surprised, because it's happened to them or a friend of theirs or whatever. And so, okay, they were lucky maybe not to come away with some, physical damage, but the mental damage, this is just about dealing with life. And that's why I find your story so inspirational, is I just think that you took, the classic, somebody gives you a lemon and you turn it into lemonade, right? You use something that some people just don't understand what it would even feel like to hear those words, right? Yeah. And that didn't send you into despair. Use a springboard to go represent us at the Gay Olympics in Hong Kong, right? And to you must be, if you don't mind me saying, you must be incredibly proud of all your accomplishments at this point. I mean, what are you most excited about?
Well, recently I was nominated for, well, I should say technically the interview that I was a part of was nominated. It's a Today Show's interview. It was called HIV/AIDS 40 Years Later. Was nominated for a GLAAD Media Award for Outstanding Journalism TV segment. And then also a media platform that I'm a part of, Plus Life Media. It's also on ABC's Localish channel. I host a fitness segment for that. The show does a lot of educating around HIV, reducing stigma, encouraging tolerance, and then also just kind of like lifestyle stuff that anybody can relate to. That was also nominated, one of our segments. So 2 GLAAD Media Award nominations this year. I went to the GLAAD Media Awards in LA, and I got to sport a jacket that I made. Well, I didn't make the jacket. I put rhinestones in the shape of a red ribbon on the lapel, and on the back I wrote HIV positive and free, and so I could just do some advocacy on the red carpet. And then I'm going to also go to New York for the GLAAD Media Awards there, where they will announce the winner for those categories. So knock on wood.
Yeah, and, good luck.
So that's just something I'm insanely proud of right now.
Is this like the beginning of an acting career for you? That's even representing reality is a form of sort of the acting communication. It sounds like you got the chops.
It's funny that you say that, because I studied theater in high school and community college, and I went to musical theater training at UCLA. So I love acting. It's just just the way it was in LA and Hollywood when I decided to go out auditioning. I wasn't really given a chance. I didn't really know what my brand was or who I was, to be honest. But it's always something in the back of my mind that I'm definitely open to circling back to that eventually if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. I think you're going to get a lot of interesting opportunities, obviously, but I hope that one comes back around and you can get a chance to grab onto it if you want. But it is really amazing that, again, all this good stuff. This isn't what you expect. You interview somebody who's HIV positive and was diagnosed with AIDS, and you expect it to be a really depressing, situation. And in some ways, I feel like, I wonder if there's a lot of people out there that get that diagnosis that can't identify with you, that could take some really good ideas from what you're communicating. But what is your sense of, when somebody gets a diagnosis like this, sort of the average person out there that, doesn't necessarily react to it the way that you did in this really, just sort of positive manner, right? What are some of the challenges about that, like that moment of recognition? And, well, can you give me any sense of, sort of feelings that you could relate to, even though you reacted to them a different way?
Yeah, for sure. And I get these kinds of messages and concerns all the time from people who are newly diagnosed. Um, I mean, the first one I can think of is not feeling like they can talk to anybody about it, whether it's their friends, family, coworkers, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then some people don't have health insurance and they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't even get medication. They have no concept of the programs that are available at their disposal. Um, and then there's romance and dating and love life and like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna be single forever, or I have to find someone who has HIV who I can settle for, basically. And then there's the fitness aspect. Okay, I'm never going to be able to work out. I'm never going to be able to take supplements or do anything like that for myself. So it's a very harsh perception of reality that's just not true in a lot of ways.
That's
If I
good
can
that
tell
you
you a
did.
story that happened in the last year, um, I had a mother and of her son who was diagnosed with HIV, and his sister both reach out to me independently on Instagram saying, "Hey, like, we've been following you for a while. We know that this person also follows you who has HIV. They're in Europe, in the Netherlands, and we really want them to come back home to us in the States, but they're, really depressed and they don't think that they have access to medication. And so we're really worried about this person's mental health. And so I had a chance to reach out and let him know, we have programs in the US where you can get medication, you can get the help you need. And you can go to school and live your life normally and be a normal kid." And so after, providing some resources, it just completely changed his mindset. And he was able to come back home, and his mom reached out and said, "Thank you so much." Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, this is a really touching story. And I mean,
So I was able to help
I'm
remake
so
them.
happy to hear another positive story out of all this.
But it highlights the reality of a lot of people's perception of it, and that the family and loved ones also don't know anything either.
That was sort of an amazing thing too, that his sister and his mom, were reaching out in that way, that they wanted him to come home. They were overcoming their, naivete about HIV. They had to, obviously, they probably weren't like preparing for that day, right? But then it happens to them, and instead of reacting in the way that that a lot of people feel is going to happen to them when they try to share something with their family or whatever, those two people went the opposite way. They reached out to you, and what a beautiful conclusion to that whole event. But we need way more of those. But what I loved is that you said you went through this long litany of things that people believe, and then you said, and most of that's wrong.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is that if I'm getting you right, is that other people could take your life as an inspiration and actually emulate portions of it. Look, you just seem to be this amazing case of bouncing back. But what you're saying is that everybody can bounce back and have a decent life, even here in the United States, that they can get healthcare, right? They can get on the ACA or whatever. They can have normal relationships, can't they? Because people don't realize a lot of times that when folks are well controlled, that they're not contagious, right? Yeah. And that there's been a lot of couples where one of them's HIV positive and the other one isn't. And, they've been around for a long, long time being intimate, and they haven't passed it because of that fact.
And even having a negative child.
Yeah, that's another thing that came out on a recent interview that I had with Susan Cole, is that she had 5 children, 2 of them after her diagnosis, and neither one of them had HIV. And in fact, with the right precautions, with being really careful about, again, antiretroviral treatment, which is widely available, maybe you have to make some effort, to get the insurance and get on it and whatever. And there's some areas that are more amenable to it than others, right? I heard that, if you're living in New York City, there's a lot of response from the government and from support organizations in order to help people to find a normal life. Okay, the deep south, maybe not so much. Might be a good reason to move to another location. I don't know. Where are you? Where do you reside?
I'm in downtown LA, so also
LA. Okay, another good spot. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the story that you told. The person went all the way to Amsterdam. Was that a reaction to where they had grown up in the U.S., or just that many misunderstandings, or just a need to hide away? I mean, what drove them?
I think they were already studying abroad when they got the diagnosis, and then they just didn't feel comfortable coming back home.
Right. Yeah. So as you advise people, what are the big things that you keep? What are the things in your toolbox that you keep going back to help folks to deal with their diagnosis and their status? Do you have are you writing a book yet? Do you have a book you want to pitch, or advertise on the show, or are there some things that you can kind of tease out that are common themes for folks?
Typically I will suggest some things. I often will direct people to my YouTube channel, because I do go through a lot of individual things, whether it's specifically supplements or being undetectable, and the issue of disclosing your status to intimate partners, and then just like gratitude journaling. And I kind of go into all these things there. It's such a holistic approach. And it applies to everybody. It's basically what everybody should be doing for their own mental health. So it's all those same general things that can apply to everybody, really. And then the more specific HIV things is just being able to link them to resources so that they know that there's some tangible support out there. And a lot of people, I find, on top of all that, just need the permission to be like, yes, you can go after your fitness. You can tell the person that you're dating that you are HIV positive. You can do that. I allow that for you. and then people feel empowered and like, okay, I did it and it was great and it worked out, or it didn't work out, but I'm glad I did it.
So at least at that point, they can remove themselves from a non-sustainable situation if they have the bravery to go ahead and just be themselves.
And right? A lot of that sense of feeling permission is just about visibility of role model, of seeing someone that they can relate to taking certain steps, and then being able to relate to that and say, okay, now I can do it too because this other person is.
Yeah, that's right. I think role models are a big thing, and but I think also kind of the encouragement that you're giving. I mean, YouTube is sort of the modern version of writing a book, right? It's in some ways it's even more compelling and more accessible. Definitely include your YouTube channel on this video so people can check it out. And I think the other point that you made is absolutely true, because I'm sitting here, so I'm not gay and I'm not HIV positive, but I love all the things that you're saying. The idea of having gratitude, the idea of thinking about your mental health, because one of the biggest issues is that because it's invisible, like everybody knew your ankle was broken, and so they understood that you needed to heal, and that your ankle needed to be taken care of. But the problem with mental health is it's not tangible the same way, and people forget that an injury that's causing you pain there that doesn't get any attention festers and can be crippling, right? And so your ankle is fine because it got the right treatment. And obviously your mind is strong too, because it got, what it needed as well. But that's something that's so neglected. And so I'd really encourage everybody to go ahead and tune in on some of those things. Do you ever, talk, about your personal story in those? I guess you do.
Oh, yeah.
Model, right?
A lot.
Model. Yeah. Because I think that's another thing that people are really missing out on, an opportunity to gain more empathy for their fellow humankind. HIV is just one challenge that many different people face. And I think watching your videos could be a great way to break the stigma, to see also, you know, the variety of life that you enjoy and represent,
Mhm.
and that this is, that this encouragement that you give for people to just go ahead and be yourself and admit who you are, and that's okay and that's good, right? Because I think that's the last thing, is that, is to understand that whatever it is that they are, if they, as long as they're not out to hurt other people, right, that that is okay and that is good, and they are valuable as human beings, and they deserve to have all the things that you have accrued for yourself.
Yeah, and the reality is you can have all the education, all the knowledge, all the support, all the resources in the world, but if at the end of the day you don't have enough self-worth, then it doesn't matter. It's not, you're not going to make the decisions that are going to benefit you in the long term. So,
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big thing to to bite off, though, because I meet so many people that are just basically insecure. I mean, I don't know what your childhood was like, but so many people didn't get that kind of positive reinforcement from their parents, right?
yep.
And as a result, they didn't develop, the kind of self-esteem that you're exhibiting right here, right? And that, and I hope you're deeply feeling that, right? You don't even have to do all the great stuff that you've done to feel good about yourself, right? We are all significant
Yeah.
and equally significant in the universe, right? When you think from a universal perspective or a religious perspective or a spiritual perspective,
Yeah.
yeah, that we all have equal value inside of us. And I love the idea that you found your own personal happiness, right? And that you've also found a place to help other people find their happiness, and that happiness could be anything what they
Yeah.
pick out for themselves, and that,
Exactly.
like the L'Oreal ad is, says they're worth it,
Hmm.
right? They're worth it as human beings. Yeah, well, what sort of following do you have on YouTube? I mean, is this like, you must have millions of people watching your
No.
videos? No.
I've had millions of views, but I have around, I think, like 20,000 subscribers on YouTube and 25,000 on Instagram.
It's
A
terrific.
modest amount.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is, a serious following for sure. But I got to be honest that I am really surprised that it's not more. But I know it takes time to build momentum, and the only reason I'm surprised it's not more, because of the value of the things that you're saying. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm really, I'm just so impressed. I feel like it's almost reinforcing things in me to hear your story, that
Yeah.
it's reminding me of maybe some of the things that I do for myself to try to keep myself feeling okay with all
Mhm.
the challenges of life, because we all have our own,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And with 38 million people out there with HIV, everybody deserves that message.
Mhm.
So
We'll
get
get
on
there.
that. Yeah,
We'll get there.
they got to get on that site internationally. But I hope also, one of the things that, like I said, we're going to put your site and all that stuff down here, and we've got a different kind of following. There's I see a lot of despair out there, and I don't have a lot of time. I'm not like in the business of coaching people and helping them, and I wish I had time for that.
Yeah.
I'm in the business of trying to find a solution that would convert people that are HIV positive, people living with HIV, to a
Mhm.
normal life where
Mhm.
HIV is no longer a consideration. And even that, right, can't spread fast enough, right? It's
Yeah.
obviously, gene and cell therapy is going to be expensive at first, but I would say to everybody that's listening to this, and and you've taught this lesson as well, healthcare in the United States is not bad. It's
Mhm.
likely to cover things like this.
Mhm.
So if you're in the United States and suffering from HIV, get on healthcare, get on your antiretrovirals, go ahead and start pulling all the great stuff into your life that you've always wanted, and don't let anything, your self-esteem or your diagnosis get in your way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And listen to this positive messaging, but also, to have some hope that we will put this in the rearview mirror
Mhm.
one day.
And I do get that a lot from people is they're fixated on when are we going to have a cure? Is this the cure? Is this it? Can I get the cure? Um,
Yeah.
and I tend to tell people that honestly, my focus is not the cure because right now I have medication that I take a pill once a day. outside of that, I don't really think about it. I'm undetectable. I'm been in a 3-year relationship with an my HIV negative partner. And outside of that, I don't think about it. So for all intents and purposes, and I take more supplements every day for just bodybuilding and overall fitness than I do for HIV. So I really don't, it's a non-issue in my life. So when and when an HIV cure comes, that'll be great, but I'm not waiting for it. And now with the advent of injectable HIV medication, where you can go 2 months and then get an injection every 2 months, then like it's really, really insignificant.
Are you experiencing any side effects from the medication? Sometimes when you see the ads on TV, they suggest some common side effects, but do those really happen?
I I don't have any noticeable side effects. I'll put it that way.
Perfect.
None.
Yeah. And you know other people, and are the medications pretty good at this point in terms of minimizing those side effects?
Yeah, they're really good, and our life expectancy is essentially the same as anyone else taking the medication. I do get people who are, I would say, more probably paranoid that everything that they're experiencing ailment is related to their medication. But it's hard to give evidence that that's exactly what's happening. Like people will message me and say, "Oh my God, I gained tons of weight. It's the medication. I lost a bunch of weight. It's the medication." It's like, well,
Yeah.
didn't we all lose or gain a lot of weight over the pandemic? It's hard to say what it's from, but I tell people act as if it's not the medication and act as if it's under your control. Make those adjustments and see if there's a positive change there. If not, maybe you can address it with your doctor. But if there is, then you're not blaming it on a medication. Again, victim mindset the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very good analysis of that. Is that, yeah, they're actually attributing things there and then maybe just giving up on it, as opposed to just doing
Exactly.
some problem solving
Yeah.
and recognizing that they could get through it. Yeah. Well, Jeff, are there any other things that you'd like to tell, the audience, sort of about HIV, about stigma, about, sort of your journey that you could
I
share?
think a topic that has become a little more contentious with U equals U is the concept of disclosure. And is a person obligated, if they're going to have a sexual encounter with you, to tell you their status? Um, and I personally do, just because I am so open and transparent, and I also like to have the opportunity to possibly educate. But I know that the circumstances are very different for everybody, and in some cases, it can be dangerous to disclose your status to someone that you don't know intimately or trust intimately. And whether it's a hookup or whether you're dating, it's a very personal choice. And if you're at the point where you're undetectable, you're no longer transmittable. So effectively, it no longer affects the other person's body. Then what business is it really of theirs? It's it's not. And so a lot of people feel like, well, it's my body, so I should have the right to know if someone else is HIV positive. But it's like, it's basically like if I have diabetes and I'm gonna sleep with somebody and they're like, well, I need to know that you have diabetes first.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
So
Huh. Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. And, that may also just be, if they're dealing with that question, it may be just another impediment to having normal relationships with other folks
yeah,
if they can't resolve that in their head. But so what you're saying is it's a personal choice,
yeah.
because it is true. It's not affecting the other person. And look, life is risky. Having relationships has some element of risk in it. You could be in a car with that person and they could get into an accident. I mean, you know, lots of stuff happens, and we have to,
There's
keep going on. Right.
there's also the argument that as an HIV negative person, you need to take your sexuality into your own hands. And so There's condoms, which are highly effective. There's PrEP, which is highly effective. And the other counter argument that I get is, well, if the person's not taking their medication properly, then maybe they're undetectable for a day or this week or whatever. Well, now that we're having injectable HIV medication that lasts for months at a time, that's going to be less and less of an issue. So I think as time goes on, this disclosure controversy needs to fade.
Yeah, I did not realize that that was a, sort of a big point of contention in the community. Any other things that are stuff that you frequently get asked?
No, I don't, not off the top of my
Opine
head.
on? Yeah.
I was shocked though. In the last few years, I was seeing a barber in the Valley in LA, and we had a pretty good rapport. I seen him numerous times, and we were on a texting basis whenever I needed an appointment or whatever. And I was slowly like telling him more and more about my life. And on the last visit, I told him, oh, I do a bunch of HIV advocacy work. I'm HIV positive. And his reaction was like, wow, man, like that's crazy. I don't think I would be able to handle something like that. That's so intense, but like mad respect for you, for what you're doing, and for how you've handled it. And, I didn't think anything of it outside of that. And the next time I tried to make an appointment to go see him, I didn't get any kind of response. And I tried for like a while, kept reaching out, and I called the shop even and spoke to somebody, and they're like, oh yeah, he's in the store, but he's got a client, so I'll have him call you back. Didn't call me back. So it didn't take me too long to realize that I scared him off, and he, because of stigma, was afraid of something there, or maybe he just didn't want to be associated with me as a person. Could be. So I found a new barber. He's great. He's awesome.
Your hair looks great, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. He'll appreciate that. And he posts to social media a lot. So he would post me on his Instagram. And at one point, one of his clients one day said, hey, I saw you post this picture of your client who has HIV. He goes, are you concerned at all? Because cutting his hair, and like, what if you nick him? What if there's blood? And what if you cut somebody else's hair? It's like, wow, it really doesn't work like that. But that was surprising.
No, but I've heard that doctors and dentists can sometimes be scared off by this. Now, you'd think healthcare professionals would understand all the nuances of this, and that they are in no danger, and that they aren't going to be passing it around. But, it is a very overwhelming, scary subject, and people maintain their, I hate to say the word, ignorance about it.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have it, you probably, in some ways, it's kind of even a scary subject to talk about, so you don't learn. Mm-hmm. Another reason to tune into your YouTube channel. You'll feel a lot safer out there. Yeah. I'm just speaking to people that don't have HIV. Yeah. I think a lot of folks don't realize how hard it is to get HIV. Yeah. There are certain behaviors, okay, that are going to increase your risk, but you have tremendous control over your life, and the person whose hair you're cutting, and all your friends and all the people that you hang with casually are literally, you don't need to know their status. No, it makes absolutely no difference to you. And even if they are well controlled like you still don't need to know their status, even if you're intimate with them. Mm-hmm. And that's just true. That's tremendously empowering in a way, for folks that are just, the stigma also is accompanied by probably a lot of limitations in their life, and a lot of fears that are irrational or unreasonable that they could let go of. Yeah.
You touched on doctors not always having all the information as well. And it's very true, especially related to supplements. There was this idea, especially back probably before I was diagnosed, where the medications were so hard on the body that doctors didn't want to add any kind of extra stressors to our kidney or liver and such. And so that supplements were off the table. But because the medications nowadays are so non-toxic, I'm able to take like whey protein every single day and tons of creatine and all these other supplements every day. And I get lab results and checkups every 6 months to check on all that stuff. And it's all really, really good.
Hmm.
But doctors are still telling their patients, no, no, no supplements, no nothing. And I find it's kind of lazy in a way
Yeah.
to not really take it on a case by case basis and kind of work with the patient to follow up and to check on their vitals. And okay, let's try the protein and see how it works. You know, yeah. So I think that's something that the medical community can work on as well.
Yeah, I think that's really good input to the medical community. I think sometimes they're also suffering from the fact that the amount of time that they have with patients just keeps getting
Oh
drawn down
yeah,
further and further. It used to be that your family doctor had more of a holistic interest in you and
yeah.
had time to pursue that, but I wonder if the time even exists now.
And
Uh,
HIV patients need that extra personal care. And if your doctor says nope, no supplements, that's it, then that's already just demoralizing. Is if you're trying to, start up your fitness regimen.
they
So
can
what
still
I
go back to your same advice, which is, to go ahead and take control of that.
Yeah,
They should be their own healthcare advocate when they hear
exactly.
things like that, to recognize, well, okay, that may not be 100% true. Read more on the internet, learn
Mhm.
more from people that are doing this, and then go in there and go, hey, could we try this? And would you be willing?
Yeah,
Would you just measure? And then if the answer is
exactly.
no, get a new doctor. There's a lot of doctors out there, a
Exactly.
lot of barbers out there. One relationship is not the make or break in a great life.
Mhm.
So that's really interesting. I'm sorry I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, that's you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I tell them. It's like it's your life, it's your body. You have to be your own advocate and get a second opinion or say, "Hey, I know you said no supplements, but it's 2 weeks before I come in for my lab work. Why don't I try it for 2 weeks, get my blood work done, see if there's anything negative, and then next time try it for a month and go from there." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you have special health care, or are you kind of dealing with the same system as everybody else out there?
So funny you say that. I was on special healthcare coverage where my premiums were totally covered. The cost of medication was covered. Everything it's really great for people who are under a certain income threshold in the U.S. Everybody in the U.S. who's under that income threshold can get it. It's fantastic. Once you are a dollar over that threshold, it's a cliff, and you just go from everything covered to okay, you're on your own. So fortunately, I have employee covered health
Hmm.
insurance, so it's fine. I pay a premium like everybody else. It's totally normal, and I'm just thankful actually that I make enough that I don't qualify anymore. So
Of course. Yeah, I guess, well, especially since you were able to get sufficient health care in your situation. I don't know whether there is like some gap in there where people actually find that, they can't get employer health care and they can't afford premiums or whatever. Right? The times that I looked at the ACA, and I help people to look at the ACA,
mhm.
I found it to be a really good program that generally you would go ahead and pick out your coverage, and then it
Yeah,
would measure that against your income, and it would supplement it in some way so that it did become affordable. And
yeah,
I didn't realize that you could go a dollar over and lose everything. I didn't see that in,
not
it's 10 years
ACA.
since I've looked at it. Oh,
It's
okay.
specifically for HIV.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
And so does the ACA have coverage in it for HIV, or is that
yeah.
excluded? That's within it. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I was expecting to hear again, because of the amazing success that you had, in this, the way you've determined your own life and what you've made out of it. I was expecting you to say, "Oh yeah, I come from a rich family, and so I had like premium
Definitely
healthcare." That
not.
wasn't the case at all. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it was quite the
no,
opposite.
yeah, yeah, no. That's another tremendously important thing for people to understand is you're a regular guy who did this.
Mhm.
You're not you don't come from extreme privilege.
No.
And how did your family react to all this stuff when this was going
Um,
on?
it was, it was, fear, not thinking that, the worst had come true, basically. So just to give you a little backstory, when I came to the US with my mom at about 5 years old, we were actually fleeing my biological father, her husband at the time, who was in jail for physically beating her. She was convinced that at some point he might try to kill her and take me back to Morocco. And so she fled the country and came here as a refugee and didn't tell any of her brothers and sisters, her family, nobody where she went. So we were essentially in a hiding here in Southern California. I was using a different name until I was 22 years old. Timmy Zimmer was the name that I went by. And before she ever left, he had a suspicion that she would try to run away. And he said, if you take away my son, he will grow up without a father. He will grow up to be gay and he will get AIDS. And so that was like, oh, he was right, in her mind. So I think that was something that she struggled with, was that he would be proven right.
It predicted this dark situation, was like the sum of all
Somehow
fears
she's
had come
responsible
true.
on some level.
Wow. I mean, didn't she think you were going to end up that way anyway? I mean, when you think about having a crappy father, which it sounds like, if you don't mind me saying, beats up your mom and,
Yeah.
and acts that way and isn't, that probably had more influence on you maybe not following, automatically following the normal, not normal, it's not even normal, that model, right? Like, he may have been setting a whole bunch of things in motion, even having to do with your self-esteem, even in terms of this victim mentality, all of that stuff, the
Right.
fact that you had to masquerade as Timmy Zimmer in Southern California before you could become yourself again. And it's like, yeah, so what? So he predicted the future, and he was part of that trajectory that sent you and your mom that direction. And it's like, it doesn't matter that he predicted it,
But that's what perpetrators of violence and narcissists and sociopaths do, is they gaslight you and think that what the consequences of what happens is their fault and not the person who is causing all this trauma.
Yeah. Thank you for summing it up that way. I got to tell you that I feel like I'm doing such an inadequate job of interviewing you, because there's so much, there's just so many gems in here. I just don't even know which way to go. But again, like, it's such an important aspect of life, which is this idea of that there are folks out there that are trying to convince you that a whole bunch of things, that are befalling you are from you and your behavior, when it's really from their behavior.
100%.
Right? Yeah. Once again, a lesson that is for everyone. This is not for gay people. This is not for people that have HIV. This is for every human being on earth, to recognize some of these things that are just truisms. And, I'm just, I got to say, I'm really just inspired. And, I got to say, I feel a little bit, I'm not worthy, in a way. It's been a tough interview on me. I just, the level of accomplishment and the self-confidence that you exhibit to even be able to, share even some tears with us about that person that you helped in Amsterdam, and your openness, your transparency, your approachability, your accessibility. I mean, wow. And I got to say, I'm going to go to your YouTube channel. I'm going to start watching some of these videos, because, this is just, information that we've talked about here today that are about personal growth from any point to any point, from an up period in your life to further up, from a stumbling, like a pothole in the road, to getting back in charge of your life and doing great stuff with it. And I'm really glad to have met you. I don't know what else to say. I mean, if there's anything else, any other wisdom that you can lay on me or your audience or whatever, I would love to hear it.
Well, I will tell you that the only reason why I can speak to these things is because I've been through it and I've been there and I've been at the bottom of the barrel, not just with my AIDS diagnosis, but with an attempted suicide in my teens, with deep dark depression for years, being bullied growing up, having gone through the trauma with I've just been through so much. It gave me the opportunity to really find a lot of empathy and compassion and understanding. Because if I didn't, I would have imploded by now, or I would be so dark and hateful and angry, and it would be the opposite for sure. I'm excited. I do want to add too that I just recently joined a CAB, Community Advisory Board, I think is what it stands for. So there's a program being initiated by the NIH where they want HIV scientists and researchers who are hands-on working on trying to get a cure to meet on every quarter or however long, and to discuss their findings and also discuss ways in which we can connect with artists and influencers such as myself to relay messages to the community and have this kind of crosstalk. So I'm just really excited that we're doing that.
Actually, that was one of the purposes of us asking you to join us here today. Is that's exactly the kind of connections we want to make, and because I think that it won't be enough to just improve HIV. What we've seen is there are a lot of things that get in the way of people embracing those things and bringing them into their life and improving their lives with new technologies and discoveries and eventually the cure. So, offline, if you don't mind, share that information on that community advisory board. And if there's any way we could get involved, I think we've made some really interesting observations in our research that, may be valuable to that group. I'd love to be involved. Well, on that note, let me just thank you again for joining us today and just bring in yourself. And I now recognize that, who you are to other people has been uplifting to you as well. Like, so it's amazing how giving has so many benefits in return. I think you're another example of that. And maybe you don't realize immediately the incredible impression that you make when you talk so openly about your own trials, your own difficulties, your own journey to where you are today. And I hope that everybody listening today will, take a lesson from a lot of the things that you said and grab onto their life and realize, fundamentally how important they are as a human being and that they deserve to have a great life like what you've made for yourself. And I hope we'll have another conversation because we could not possibly cover it in one. No. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure.